Hi, we're Mike and Alicia Hernon of the Messy Family Project. We are on a mission to empower parents to embrace their sacred calling. We are parents of 10 children and grandparents of 5, and we are thrilled to be able to host this series, Family, with Shalom World.
High and flying or deep down by the sea, anywhere we wish to be. When we're loved, we're happy and free. Come together, we're all family. Time to shine a brighter light in our world. Time for unity and peace. Come and see how great we can be. Come together, we're all family. Come together, we're all family.
Today, we're going to be talking about adolescence, preparing yourself and your adolescent child for this crazy and wonderful time.
So I know when our kids became teenagers, when our oldest daughter, Katie, started into the teenage years, that's when I pulled out all the parenting books again. I was like, I don't know how to do this. I feel like we were learning how to be a parent just the way we were learning how to be a parent when she was an infant. And you know what's very interesting is that, yes, infancy is a huge change, but adolescence is also a huge change. It is almost like the birth of the adult person during adolescence. So if you feel like this is a daunting task to guide this child through the teenage years, you're right. It is a daunting task. But that's why we have our guest here today, to give you some hope and encouragement, some guidance in forming your child for adolescence.
Yeah, so this is a really important topic. So first, let's talk to some parents about some of their struggles and questions with dealing with adolescence.
You get to a place where you think, you've figured out how it works because you've gotten through a certain phase of your child growing up. The thing is that it is constantly evolving and changing, so you're kind of running behind it the whole time. So once your kids are getting up to adolescent age, there's still an element of the toddler, but now they're toddlers with driver's licenses, and they want to make their own decisions, and they want to feel like they made their own decisions, and yet they don't have the information and the experience to process because they haven't had the life experience yet. So you've got this weird dichotomy between the child that wants to own their own path and the child who doesn't know how to own their own path. And it's very difficult, to encourage them to find their way, but also to guide them.
There was a lot of challenges preparing my child for adulthood, and with social media is one of the biggest challenges, that you can't never take away what you already saw. And that to me has been the biggest challenge, is the influence of this dark world.
The challenge of preparing your kids for adolescence is that they push away and you have to reel them back in and constantly reach them and form a relationship even when they push you away.
I think it starts from the beginning in opening up your kids to being able to talk to you about anything and everything.
Preparing your child for adolescence is basically just staying the course and helping them understand that the choices that they make will make an impact, but then allowing them to be able to make those mistakes and to walk through them graciously and learn from them.
So we've heard from lots of parents about raising teenagers. And so we brought in some friends of ours, Bill and Tanis Merimee, who have 9 children of their own. They are the founders of Marriages of Grace. And we thought that we could have a conversation with them to get some tips and tricks and encouragement in raising and guiding children through the time of adolescence. So welcome.
So happy to be here.
It is great to have you, but this is a pretty daunting topic. For a lot of parents, we look forward to the adolescent years with some dread, or those who are in the throes of raising teens. some
didn't realize it would be
frustrations.
so hard.
Yeah, there's challenges there, right? But why is it for us as parents, when we enter this time, why is it so challenging? Why is it frustrating? What do you think that happens during this time?
Yeah.
So I think part of the issue is that we were all teenagers once as well, and we gave our parents a run for their money. And so looking back on that, there's fear and trepidation that same Bill, when he was 15, is now going to be inflicting that punishment on me as a father.
Yeah.
Right.
So turnaround is fair play, right? I mean, this is,
It's right, it's expected. But then also society has changed a lot over the last 25 years, and my parents didn't have to deal with cell phones, computers, internet, all these distractions. And there's a great fear that what I'm trying to inculcate as a father and as a Christian to my children is being directly interfered with by a lot of those societal changes.
One thing that I heard said, which I think is so true, is that so many of us struggle to love our teenagers because when we think back on our own teenage years, we don't love ourselves. Like, it's almost like you have to go back and think about yourself as a teenager and love yourself, and then you can love your teenager kind of in a more authentic way.
Right, and I think also because we've raised our children as mothers from infancy, we've nursed them, we've taught them, if we're homeschooling moms especially, we have a very vested interest in this child, and we want so desperately for them to love Christ and love the church.
Yeah.
And when they stray, it's very difficult because we think not only what have we done wrong, but why? Why are they abandoning this?
The mom guilt.
It's the mom, right?
Always the mom
right. I
guilt,
think
yeah.
it's difficult as a mom. It may be different as a father, but from that mom perspective, we just love our children so desperately. So then when they make those decisions, those poor decisions, it makes it difficult to honestly sometimes to love them. I mean, there have been times where I've said, I don't like my kid.
Right.
And
it's okay to say that.
That's right. I mean, that's just honesty, right?
Right.
And really, this is the time of parenting is changing. The role we had, I always think of it this way, that we're in the early days, not that we aren't always doing this in some ways, but that we're protecting their innocence. And
when
really,
they're young,
when they're young, right? And then we're really transitioning to this time of really building Christian maturity, which allows and requires freedom to be involved, a new level of independence, which is a little scary thing, particularly in this world that we live in today, right? That we can't completely control everything in their lives, and probably we don't want to, right? Because that's not going to be good for them. I mean, that transition is really what adolescence is about.
It's very tricky to do well.
It's a big deal for them. They're going through a lot of changes, but it's also changing in how we interact and relate to them. Our role is kind of shifting in this as well.
We have to remember that we have been given these children from God for a period of time. They're not really ours, but it's our responsibility to raise them so that they can go out into the world and be the next Christian adults that are going to be forming society and raising their own children. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we have loved them through this period of time, but also taught them through, rules and obedience and all of that, but also through love, so that they can go out and then practice that same charity as adults. But it's that adolescent time, that's our job, right? To be able to do that during that period of time.
So can you give us some, from your experience in raising your own, you have adult children now as well as children still in the home, what is some kind of like tips and tricks? What are some great things that parents can hear and do with their own kids to help them get through this time? What would be some advice that you would give to parents?
Well, one thing that I think my wife has done an amazing job at is bringing the seasons of the church into the family. So, and also the rites of passage, your baptism, your sacrament of First Holy Communion, your first confession, your confirmation. Those are all integral parts of a celebration in our family. So much so that we actually celebrate the anniversaries of these as well. They're on our Google calendar that it's so-and-so's anniversary of their baptism. And you're fantastic at it. There's, a cake, there's, hey, what meal do you want? So it brings the life of the church within the family and gives those anchor points throughout the year that can be a tactile remembrance of our faith. That's one of the little tips that is useful.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, because I'm always making a meal. I'm always doing things in the home. But to be able to know that these teenagers, even in their adolescent years, they expect that too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Mom,
Yeah.
it's my name day today.
Yeah.
What dessert can I have? Or, hey, Mom, it's the anniversary of my baptism. Where's my baptismal candle? Can you go get it? And these are teenagers. That might not be cool in their circle of friends, but it is part of their identity within the family. They need that identity within the family unit so that they can then take that out into the world, even if they don't want to admit it to their friends. That's important to them, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to them as a whole person. They're everything about them wants to be that person within the family unit that has an identity that's in Christ.
One of the things that you mentioned in that answer was rituals are rites of passage. So because in times gone by, there were always rites of passage for the adolescents, in ancient cultures and in medieval cultures. But in our modern culture, we seem to have lost that in some sense. And I think that's the ones who suffer the most from the lack of those rituals, I believe, are adolescents, because they're a child, but now they're a man or they're a woman. And it's really helpful for them, like you were saying, to take on that new identity. Can you give us, so what do you do in your family for those rites of passage, if you will?
And that, Alicia, you bring up a very valid point. A wise man once said, rules without relationships breeds rebellion. And that's critical at this time of their development. That age group between 9 and 13, the amount of time that you spend with them building those relationships, the return on investment is of orders of magnitude. And one of the things that I have done as a father is when my child turns somewhere between 11 or 12, I take them on a trip, just dad alone.
Boys or girls?
Boys or girls.
Okay.
They all get a week to 2 weeks just with dad. During those trips is where they really get to know dad, the man.
Yeah.
Not just dad, but I want to explain to them what it's like to be a man. And particularly with my girls, how I'm always going to be their father, and that I will love them, and that regardless of what happens, I was the first man in their life.
That's right.
And before they give their hearts to another man, come to me and ask first.
Yes.
And let me always be a part of your life.
Right.
And those conversations are very fruitful. And I think for our older children, as they go on, they look back on that 2-week period or that week period, and those are anchor points, anchor points for them. So,
that's actually been another thing that I think I would like to mention in raising these adolescents, is that we've made a concerted effort, and we've been married for 31 years, to make sure that we have periods of time as a family as well with the kids when they're teenagers, whatever, to create memories and opportunities. They always know that there's a place where they're loved. And I think in adolescence, of primary importance is the knowledge that they're loved, regardless of what they do. So they can make some major mistakes in their life, and they will. I think it's just par for the course.
I think that's part of being a teenager.
Yeah,
is making mistakes.
you're going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. But to know that, hey, mom and dad love you. Do we approve of what you've done? Absolutely not. I think it's very important for them to know that there are boundaries, there are things that are wrong and that you shouldn't do, but regardless, we love you. You always have a place in our home. And those experiences that we've created as a family help them to remember that, right? Yeah. That there's always these memories that we can talk about. Well, what about that time we did this or that or whatever? This isn't just a physical building. This is a place where memories are made and experiences are created. And that's of vital importance during these years.
Now, one thing that, or one area, or one type of child that I know some parents struggle with is people who have artistic children. And I just want to talk about that really quick, because I feel like the child who is an artist, has the heart of an artist, John Paul too has his beautiful letter to artists, right? People who are musicians, visual artists, even video and photography, all of these things. This is a gift to the world, right? We need strong the Catholic Church is the place for art. But sometimes children who have that artistic spirit, especially when they're teenagers, tend to maybe crave experiences or they wander more. They have a little slightly different needs than kids who are, just kind of like can do what's right in front of them and follow the rules, I know that both of you are artists. You have children who are very artistic. Could you give any tips to those parents who have a child who has this great gift and that is really kind of struggling to stay within the bounds of their parents' values and their Catholic faith?
What's the word? Balance these two different worlds. This artistic world with this Catholic worldview is not easy. It's extremely difficult.
Because of the state of the arts today.
Yeah. Right, because of the state that the arts are in. And then, another child who is artistic in other ways, and, he was very, very lured into worldly things that were an escape. Right?
Yeah.
So this idea of wanting to escape reality,
yes,
I think is also very, very prevalent for these artistic
yes.
kids, because the world is a difficult place, and when you're so artistic and you're thinking about these ethereal things, then escapism, I think, unfortunately, is one of these things that they struggle with, and to always know, to help them to know that we understand. We understand them. They have a place, they have a home that they can come back to or that they can come to for comfort, and that we forgive you for whatever mistakes you've made, right?
Yes.
Forgiveness also, that story of the prodigal son. I mean, truly during the adolescent years, we have to focus on that story of God's constant mercy, God's constant love. So I think, again, maybe you have some other thoughts.
I think in one sense, a lot of children that are artistic, they are, like you said, wanting to feel and experience and appreciate beauty that's around them, okay? And the world itself is a very beautiful place. It was created by God. There's also some currents in it that are not so beautiful that we've kind of introduced ourselves. And it's really important for us to expose those artistic children to the beautiful elements consistently, persistently, so that they start bringing those into their imaginations. You can read Tolkien, or you could read some nihilistic kind of, dystopian science fiction. It's your choice, but both of those choices have effects on you as an emotive person and as an artistic person. So what are you giving your child to form the basis of their artistic curiosity? If you're not careful and you're playing, Marilyn Manson around the house or, hard rock, they're going to inculcate that.
Right.
And that's going to start to affect and change the way they also create art or experience art.
Yeah, it's like the evangelization of their imagination and everything.
Right.
We've been very careful in raising our children to expose them to lots of beauty.
Yes.
So whether it's, whether it's visual arts, music, I have very strict rules about what music is allowed to be played in our house, things like that. We've been a very concerted effort that we've made throughout the years.
Particularly in the teen years, that whole dynamic of the music, of the beauty, of just exposing them, truth, beauty, and goodness. We need all of that in our home so that they know what it really is. So they get an experience of that when they go out into the culture. Then they'll see the false, fake culture of the world and be like, hey, that's not true. This is not real love. This is not real beauty. This is not real truth. And that is what we do in our homes. And I think about just whether it be forming your child who's got an artistic, gifting, as well as those with all these other gifts. It's about us as a parent teaching them what this is for, where the end is, right, in all our lives. And this is really part of our calling, because as they transition in this adolescent time, it's about opening up the world that they have a mission. They have a calling. They have a vocation. And that means taking the gifts we've been given and giving them away.
I think it's, again, very important for adolescents to have that one thing, whether it's athletic, whether it's artistic, whatever that case may be, but to nurture that in our children.
And children want to make their parents proud.
Yes, yeah.
And those kinds of opportunities give us the ability to feel proud of our children.
Right. Yeah. They need that so desperately.
So thanks, Bill and Tanis, for being with us. This was a great conversation about preparing ourselves and our kids for their adolescent years.
I was encouraged, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. It was our pleasure.
It was really great. And stay tuned for some more tips and strategies on living out this whole wonderful challenge of preparing yourself and your kids for adolescence.
So we have a lot to think about here. So we are going to give you some ideas to implement at home. Number 1, focus on relationship. All that we teach our children needs to be in the context of relationship. Any kind of guidance, any consequences, any discipline that we give has to be in that context of relationship, because rules without relationship just breeds rebellion.
The second idea to implement is give them belonging. Right? There are many people wandering around this world not knowing who they are or where they belong. Make sure your child is not one of them, right? Belonging in the home is key. Think about how you speak to your child. Are you always pointing out their failures or the expectations that they've missed, or that they need to do this or they haven't done that? Or are you confirming in word and deed that they are loved? Right? This is the beginning of all belonging, not for what they do, but for who they are.
So the third idea to implement is to allow your child to form an identity. Yes, you don't love them for what they do, but it is also very important that you help them develop a little bit more of their talents and their giftedness. That in this phase of development, the child, the teen, is forming who they are in relationship to the world. So in forming that identity through their talents and giftedness, that kind of gives them that self-confidence as they grow into being an adult.
And our fourth and final idea for you to implement, providing them rites of passage. Rites of passage are a clear mark that they're moving from one age to another. And we want you to take time. And I'm just thinking about what I do with my girls. As they come of age, I have this special date. We go on this special outing. I have a special ring that I give them. I have a special story, right? There are others that take a certain book and they read it with all of their kids. You're creating these special experiences, whether you're traveling, like we go away with, mom goes away with the girls, dad goes away with the boys. This is a time for you, for that one child, to really invest in the relationship, but also calling them to something new. Also enriching their lives so they know there are new responsibilities and new freedoms that come with that. This is the rites of passage and gives us that in our parenting and navigating through this time of adolescence.
Well, I know we have given you a lot of things to think about, and this is one of those issues that is very, very important that you take time to talk with your spouse. You need to come up with a plan. You need to come up with a way of dealing with and loving your teenagers in a really united way. So please just don't let this episode wash over you. Take some time to talk about it. Think about your teenagers and think about how you can love them better as you approach, or maybe just if you're in right now, manage this very, very important time of adolescence.
And we want to invite you to join us on the next episode of Family on Shalom World. We're going to be talking about the spiritual life of children. It is so important how we pray with our kids, how we model that for them, how we teach that to them, and how we invite them into a whole new relationship with God. So you don't want to miss the next episode. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.
We hope this episode has been a blessing to you, and if it has, we ask you prayerfully consider supporting Shalom World so we can create more episodes, more shows like this that will serve families throughout the world.
Yeah, we've been excited and honored to partner with Shalom World on this, and we want to invite you and really encourage you to make a donation in support of Shalom World. No gift is too small and no gift is too large. We'll take all donations to support Shalom World and continue to evangelize the culture.
Problems, worries, sadness. Are you seeking solutions? Bible says, do not be anxious about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Choose faith over fear.